Hey everybody, I hope you're doing well out there tonight. We are, I just want to put a disclaimer out there. We are experiencing some technical difficulties right now. We are experiencing some weather here in Illinois, so worst case scenario, we will redo this broadcast later, but fingers crossed. Let's hope the wind keeps down and we can get through the show for you guys. I got some neat stuff to show you. I'm here in the workshop tonight, a little bit different format, and with that, let's do some shout outs. To my right, I have got all you fine folks joining us tonight, and to my left, I've got the layout with some new stuff on it. So let's see who's joining us. I've got Late Night Model Railroad is here, DG Model Works, Joel Ashcroft, Randall, Mark Williams, Anthony, KBA, Michael, Tim Peters, Mickey, Mike, Ian. Welcome aboard, everybody. I hope you're having a pleasant evening. If you're here in the Midwest, well, you might need to hunker down. We're supposed to get some pretty interesting weather, so let's hope we can get through this. Let's do one more round of shout-outs before we start the show. We got Jim in the house, Donnie, Delta 9. Let's see, Eric, the Peninsula Rail Fan, Michael, Robert, SP Rock, and looks like Jack has joined us. So welcome aboard, everybody. I hope you are doing well tonight and staying nice and warm tonight. So without further ado, let's do what we always do. Let's maintain the comfortable position in our workshop. Let's grab the beverage of our choice and let's get started with Train Tuesday. And what have I got to start with? Well, let me go ahead and share my screen. So it's been a while since we've offered these. We're offering the GP50s, and it's been a bit since we've done these. Now, some brief background on the GP50s. This was kind of going into a new decade for EMD. They were going into the 1980s, and certainly railroading across the United States had changed quite a bit from when EMD first started offering four-axle diesels. Now, this particular diesel, I always say it was made for the 80s because it was one of the first locomotives that came with a microprocessor that helped with wheel slip, something that we take for granted nowadays on modern locomotives. But from 1980 to 1985, the GP50 was built as the four-axle road switcher that would replace the GP40-2 and the GP38-2 before that. It came equipped with a 16-cylinder EMD 645F3B diesel engine, which was could produce about 3,500 to about 3,600 horsepower. Now, not quite as popular as the GP40s or 38s. There was only about 278 of these built. They had the same overall dimensions as a GP40-2. However, because of the increased tractive effort of 64,000 pounds and the continuous rating of 62,400 pounds, and that microprocessor computer, which was brand new for EMD at the time, this was an all-new locomotive for all intents and purposes. Now we're going to talk about a couple of the roads that were the initial purchasers of the GP50, as well as some that ended up in secondary use. Now it's interesting to know that since GP50s were first produced, none of them belong to their original railroads. All the original railroads that ordered these are now long gone. So starting out, you can see we've got the Norfolk Southern. Now originally this was a Southern locomotive. And we talked briefly about this the other day. And the cool thing about these is they were delivered, not only was the short hood tall, like on first generation Jeeps, but they were set up, control stands were set up so that they ran long hood forward. Pretty cool. Norfolk Southern was one of the last railroads to perform this way. And they did that for years, right up into the 2000s. It was pretty commonplace. Now this locomotive right here, 7037, this is the original Norfolk Southern paint scheme. So really cool. And we're going to offer these in 3 different road numbers. And we'll go through these here. So we got 7037. Now notice too, since I said this is the original paint scheme, notice the sill has a, an interrupted stripe. It's not a clear, solid stripe. By the time we get to 7054, the paint scheme has changed very slightly. We still have the thoroughbred paint scheme, but it now has a solid white stripe. And it's going to come, again, it's going to be set up so that it runs long hood forward with the firecracker antenna. Here's 7085. Now, if you look carefully, I'll zoom in on there. You can see this was a former Southern unit. This was common for Norfolk Southern to do this back in the day. Now, each one of these guys is going to have very subtle differences per Genesis. That's how Genesis does things. Every single locomotive is going to be subtle changes, even within the same road. Now, here's one I will admit I'm somewhat partial to. This is Burlington Northern. Burlington Northern purchased a few of these, and they had 2 different versions. Now, we're doing the version with the standard cab, not the 5-crew cab. This is the standard cab, but what's cool about these is they have the tiger stripes, and we're doing 2 variations of the tiger stripes. 3112, as you see here, has the orange and white, and 3126 has an alternating orange and black. Now, the reason why Burlington Northern did this is this was to increase visibility for potential grade crossing accidents. And Burlington Northern did a lot of experimentation with this. GP50s were one of them. They were delivered with the orange and black or the orange and white stripes. We're going to be offering this in 3 different road numbers, the 2 that I just showed you, as well as 3141. Now, for you guys that do get the Tsunami 2 sound decoder, not only do you get the sound, but you get that cool rotating beacon that you see on these pictures. You get that actually operates. DC only, they're not going to have that availability. But with the Tsunami 2, you can definitely do that. Now, we do offer these, like I said, in the DC version for those that want to put in their own decoder of their choice. Now, what's really cool about the tiger stripes, that's what the rail fans were calling these. They were pretty popular throughout the mid to late 80s until they were slowly replaced with the whiteface scheme that came out in the early 90s. And again, each one is going to come out with their particular rotating beacon. So really a neat locomotive. We haven't offered that paint scheme in a little bit. It's been a while. All right, so for you guys up there in Chicago or anywhere in the Midwest, really, here's another strong seller, C&W. And the thing that I always thought was cool about C&W is the gong bell. In fact, I think I actually have one of these in the studio. It's a different number than what we're offering this time. This is from a previous run, but let me see if I can bring him up. I think you can cut. No, you can't see on my workbench. Hold on. Here we go. Tsunami 2. So here we go. Here's 5059. And let's see what other roads or road numbers we are offering. 5082 and 5091. Now, another cool thing, when we do the Athearn Extra Live later this month, we're going to show you some really cool prototype pictures that were captured back when these locomotives were roaming the rails. Some of them are still out there, though, believe it or not, in different capacities, just not their original owners. But originally, these were offered to the Chicago Northwestern. They were using them for their fast freights, their TOFC freights. If you remember, and they were just phasing out by the time I moved to Illinois, but if you remember those really cool 45-foot C&W trailers with the eagle on the side, or the hawk, that's where you would have seen these. All right, so what else are we offering in here? So here's one, and I haven't seen one in a number of years, but that by the time we do the Athearn Extra, I'll have to see if any of these still remain on the roster. BNSF, this is good for early 2000s. These are former Santa Fe GP50s in the patch. And a few of these lasted into the BNSF era, as seen here. And these are part of the Prime for Grime. These are going to be Prime for Grime. So the Santa Fe blue and yellow, it's faded out. And you can really see the patch job here. I'll go ahead and I'll zoom in on that for you. It's just per the prototype. Everything's faded except for the patch job. And if you were rail fanning BNSF in the late 90s, early 2000s, you probably remember seeing patch jobs like this. Again, early, late 90s, early 2000s. We're offering for this round of BNSF Prime for Grime, we're offering 2 road numbers. Let's see the subtle changes. Now, I should note too that going back here, 3175 is a phase 1. 3200 is a phase 2. There's some subtle changes too. If you look real carefully, there's some subtle changes. And ditch lights on 3200 are yellow. They're blue on 3175. So you got to remember, when these were first delivered to the Santa Fe, they didn't have ditch lights. Now, speaking of Santa Fe, we are going to offer standard Santa Fe, pretty much as they were in the 80s. And also doing phase 1 and phase 2. So if you're a fan of 1980s mainline power, we've got a locomotive for you. These were not quite as popular as some of the subsequent locomotives, and probably not as popular as earlier offered locomotives, but nonetheless, a lot of the West and Central railroads picked these up. Now, this is not a GP50. This is going to be our next subject. Before we move on, though, I want to make sure if anybody had any questions that they're taken care of. So, like I said, we're going to talk in depth about these GP50s. They're one of the, I don't know if I'd say they were my favorite Jeeps, but they're definitely ones that don't get a lot of attention. They didn't really produce that many of them. So let's see what we got. Any questions out there on the GP50s? Let's see. Yes, Falcon service. That's what I was trying to get out of my head. Harold says that both CNW paint schemes are beautiful. Yeah, they are. No, Joel. Maybe in a contest. Maybe we'll do that. Let's see. Randall, if you're talking about this guy, that is DC only, and there's no sound because it's not on the track, and it's DC only, so there's no sound in this guy. So I might have some sound for you later, though. Terry LaFrance is stirring things up. He says Stagecoach Yellow was much better than Zito Yellow. There you go. He's throwing it down. Let's see. Any other questions? So, yeah. So like I said, we haven't offered this in a little bit. It's been a few years. It hasn't been a very long time, but it's been a few years, and it was time to bring these out again, bring them out into roads that maybe you missed the first time, and since we are offering them again, they're going to be in different road numbers. So if you picked them up a few years ago and you've got the CNW or you got the Santa Fe and you want to add to the fleet, you can. Or if you just missed them, well, here's your chance to go ahead and get those. So, all right. So next is GP18s, and this is a locomotive that's near and dear to my heart. Actually, I spent my first few years rail fanning on with a short line that had a GP18 that was from one of the roads we're going to talk about here in a minute. GP18 is a really interesting locomotive. The GP7s, the GP9s were phenomenal in sales. And then the GP18 came out, and there wasn't, spotting wise, there's not a lot of differences. There's some very subtle differences in the alignment of the louvers, depending on when they were built, the battery box doors. Some of the biggest differences are the fans and the radiator trim is just a little bit different. But to the untrained eye, it looks like a GP7 or a GP9. And EMD offered this locomotive in 1959 for order, and unfortunately, not a lot of them sold. They didn't sell as fast or as strong as the GP9s and the GP7s before them. In fact, later on, the GP20 would kind of overshadow this particular locomotive. But let's talk about the GP18. Now, you guys on the East Coast, I know you're going to be happy about this because you've been asking for these. This is a road that we got a lot of requests for, and we're offering it in a couple of different paint schemes, including an early Conrail scheme. So the first one that I'm showing you here, this is the 1964 Tuscan Red Scheme, 302. And we're offering two. So if you're modeling the mid-60s, you can go ahead and pick up 302 or 303. Let me see if I can bring up 303. Subtle differences, again, even within the same road, subtle differences. But their big thing was follow the flag. That's what I always remember, even though it reminds me of the Wabash flag. So yeah, 303, 1964 Tuscan Red. For you guys doing later, and these were really cool. The Cornell Red. Now this is a 1971 era Cornell Red Scheme. It's got the large letters, pretty big departure from where they went. Subtle differences, but if you put them side by side, you can see the differences. Large letter, barrier stripes. You'll also notice too that the conductor side of the side skirt, it's been cut. Why did they do that? Well, it just made service and maintenance that much easier. The other thing too that I want you to notice is take a look at the dynamic brake fan. 305 has the flat style. We go back to 303 and 302. They have that pancake style. It's kind of a domed. It was a running change during the production of the GP18s. So like I said, this is one that you guys had been requesting for a while, actually. Now, another road that's been getting a lot of attention lately, and one that I know there's a few of you fans out here tonight, is Conrail, but this one isn't blue. So in the early days of Conrail, and if you model early day Conrail, you've actually got a really interesting time period because you've inherited all of these locomotives from different railroads, not just, you know, the failed Pennsy with New York Central and Pennsylvania, but roads like the Lehigh Valley. And literally what Conrail would do in the beginning days is they would black out the old logo and just simply put CR. Now this one's actually one of the neater patch jobs that Conrail did. 74.99, definitely the Conrail font, as you can see on the cab here. But this is part of our Prime for Grime. So what once was a nice Cornell red is now a kind of a faded out pinkish color, which was common for that. Still has its barricade stripes. You can just barely make out, if I zoom in here, you can see where the original name was. And Conrail just simply took some paint and painted over it and stenciled their CR right there. Same with the road number. I just patched out the old number. And so if you're doing early Conrail, you know, mid 70s, this would be a good fit for you. This is 1976 on up. And I know there's some Conrail guys out there tonight. So out of all of the GP18 orders, the biggest order holder goes to Missouri Pacific. And this is in their Jenks blue. And it's another one of those paint schemes. It's real simple, but it's really nice looking. Really nice. But yeah, Missouri Pacific ordered 151 of these from EMD. So they were the biggest owner of the GP18s. They loved them. And they lasted for many, many years through branch line service and some smaller yard service, things of that nature. But when they were purchased new, they were mainline models. So we've got here we've got 5112. And these are all late 1960s. So they're pretty much as they appeared, fresh from the order. We got 516. And of course 527. So you can build a small fleet really easily with this release. And what I always thought was cool about Mopac was, you know, a lot of railroads, they painted their trucks and their tanks either black or maybe gray or silver. No, they almost did the Mako paint scheme. They just painted the whole thing blue. Everything is blue. But it actually looks really cool, and I like that paint scheme. It's a neat paint scheme, and definitely, if you purchase the Rock Island units, you're probably going to want to pick up the Mopacs as well. And what did I say? Did I say Rock Island? I don't know. Is there any Rock Island fans out here? If there's no Rock Island fans, I'll just move on. I don't know if there's any Rock Island fans here. No, it doesn't look like it. So we'll just move on. No, I'm kidding. We're not going to move on. So the Rock Island, believe it or not, yes, they purchased GP18s. And this was their scheme in the mid-60s. This is before the maroon and yellow and then the the fire engine red and yellow, and then of course the blue. This was a simple paint scheme, but really attractive. It's a nice Tuscan maroonish color, and they had this really nice kind of a Art Deco style to them. And the GP18s, they wore them well. Now, no dynamic brakes, no winterization hatch on 1340. Now, 1348, still Rock Island, but now it's this particular unit has inherited a little bit different setup. It's got the spark arresters on it. That's the biggest thing that you'll notice. You also notice those stripes are gone, and they've gone to the Rock Island Herald as seen on the cab side. And we're going to do these Rock Islands in 3 different versions, which is fitting, as Rock Island was all over the place with their paint schemes. So the first one I showed you, 1340, that's the as delivered. 1348 is later. This is actually in the 70s. It's a simple repaint, but they added the V-style spark arresters and a small EMD plow on both ends, both the long hood and the short head. And then the next one I'm going to show you, 1353, it's as delivered. And the off-white stripes that we're putting on here, it simulates the early Scotch-Light color, you know, the reflective that they were using. So let's bring that one up next. So if you're doing the 1960s, you're going to want to look at 1353 or 1340. If you're doing the 70s, you know, early 70s, 1348 is the one for you. Non-dynamic, no winterization hatch. Pretty plain and simple. Okay, for those guys in the South, Seaboard Coastline. It's kind of neat because last month we offered Seaboard Coastline, and we're offering them again 2 different paint schemes in this. Okay, we're offering it in 2 subtle different paint schemes. So the first one that I'm showing you here, this is 1061. This one had its bell mounted on the frame, and it has an RS3L horn. You'll notice it's got dynamic brakes, but no winterization hatch. Probably did not need that for where it was stationed. Now they got these in the 60s, and as you know, this was a culmination of the Seaboard Coastline merging with the Atlantic Coastline in 67. And rather attractive paint scheme. Simple, but attractive. Now the next one, 1063, that I'm going to show you, this has got a cool setup, and it's also got a really cool, slightly different paint scheme. It's got the pulling for you. Not all locomotives got that phrase painted on it, but 1063 did. Now what's cool about the spotting differences on 1063 versus 1061 is take a look at what you've got on the short hood here. Okay, you've got, not only do you have the steam engine style bell, you got a P3 horn. It's kind of neat. Now the other thing too, the fans have been replaced on this particular unit, and let's zoom in on this so you can see this detail. It's very subtle, but they're primered. These were replacement fans on this particular unit, and they're still in primer. They didn't get painted by the time it was in this paint scheme. Subtle things like that. So yeah, 2 Seaboard Coastline locomotives, 2 different road numbers, 2 different sets of details, just like the real thing. Okay, so now we're going to stay in the late 60s, but we're going to go to Grand Trunk. Now, this one here is another one that we had got a lot of requests for. This was highly requested right up until last month. Guys were asking for some Grand Trunk. And this is late 1960s. One thing to note, too, is the if you're running these into the late 60s, around 68, into the 70s, we do include the ACI panels that can be put on separately. They come in a little poly bag inside the box of all three numbers that we're offering. Now, Grand Trunk only ordered 8 of these. The other thing, too, is you'll see they are set up long hood forward. Pretty standard. Grand Trunk Western had ordered their 8 units. They arrived on the property in 1960. The way we've got them set here, especially if you put the ACI panels on, totally appropriate for 68 into the 70s. And since these are as delivered, this is a great way if you've got some Grand Trunk and you need to add to your fleet. All as they were delivered from the factory. So Grand Trunk guys, rejoice. We listened. We brought them out for you. Max is happy. Let's see. I'm going to see if there's some other ones that Frederick's happy. He's so much of a fan that he bleeds GTW. 8 and Sam, let's go. There you go. So if you order you have till the end of, I can't believe it's February already. You have till the 25th of February to order these with your dealer. Well, don't worry. We'll probably do them again, maybe in blue. Don't worry. Remember, not a lot of GP18s built. Ibuprofen Dave talking about the Seaboard Coastline says he remembers the Pulling for You slogan. Doesn't seem like it was too long ago, does it, Dave? Terry's talking about one of the Rock Island units. I missed your comment earlier, so I don't remember which one you were specifically pointing out, but I have no surprise there. In fact, somewhere in my collection behind me in the next room, I've got a really cool picture of Silvis after the official shutdown, March of 1980, and there's just nose to tail pictures of all these Rock Island locomotives, and most of them are the blue, but there's still some maroon in there. There's still some red. Spencer's got a comment / question. He says, any more plans for Genesee and Wyoming paint schemes for the future? Maybe some 38-2s or SD40-2s would be nice. Spencer, good question. It's a really popular road, actually. I'm sure we'll be doing some more. We've done a few this past year in 2021. We offered a few different, including the GP15s, which is an excellent switcher, and the Genesee and Wyoming paint scheme. We'll probably do some more throughout this coming year. Off the top of my head, I don't know which ones those will be, so stay tuned for that. Tom says, hey, this is well timed. I need another GT Jeep. All right. In fact, let me see. I'm going to fool around back here. See if I can get something on the camera here for you. It's on my layout, so bear with me a little bit. Nope, not going to work for me. Be great if the camera came in. All right, you can kind of see it. So we offered the GP18's new for Athearn. We offered it for the first time. We announced it, I believe, in March of 2020. And I had to pick. Okay, can you guys hear it now? That's odd that StreamYard does that. There we go. All right, so yeah, that's my GP18. That was from the previous run. Like I said, we introduced those in March of 2020, and they were delivered about last spring, so April or so. And I picked up a couple of them. I had to pick up the Burlington Northern because I don't know why. I just like the Burlington Northern. I miss Cascade Green. That's a former Northern Pacific unit. And it's an earlier paint scheme, more of the early Burlington Northern. And it's funny that I stopped that car right there because that's actually the subject of the next thing we're going to talk about, the Pcnf Box Cars. These are also in the Genesis series. And man, I just picked up some not too long ago. Let's go back to that picture. And I'm going to blow it up for a second. I know I lose my sound, but I'm going to. So yeah, beautiful cars. The Genesis cars are the perfect car if you've got a home layout or a club layout, you know, where they don't have to be transported too often. I've heard some guys last time say, well, you know, I have Genesis cars and I transport them and I don't have any issues. Well, you're not a klutz like me, apparently, because there's a lot of nice detail on here that can get lost easily in transport. So most of the guys that buy the Genesis cars, they usually stay on home turf. They usually stay on the home layout. And these are going to have more detail than, say, you're ready to roll or most definitely your roundhouse. Everything is separately applied. And the biggest thing that you're going to see is the cut levers. You're going to see the all the plumbing for the braking, things of that nature. And if you mount your layout high, this layout here that I have isn't real high. When I stand up, it comes up to my chest, which is comfortable for a switching layout. You know, it still holds up well when you're looking at it. So if you've got a nice home layout and you're in the market for some 1970s into the 1990s and beyond box cars, these are going to fit for you. So let me go ahead and remove him and add this guy to the stream. Here we go. Now, this is a little bit different than the car I showed you. This is the Southern Pacific 1970s era, and we're offering this in 3 different road numbers. Now, this is a Youngstown plug door box car. Now, look at it carefully. You'll see one's a 6 foot, one's an 8 foot. And these were popular right through the 90s. They didn't go anywhere. They were produced into the 70s, and they stayed on rails all throughout the 80s, all throughout the 90s, going into the 2000s, even going into 10 years ago, and probably even now. It wasn't too long ago I saw about 3 of these still in Western Pacific paint, believe it or not, in Galesburg, Illinois. I'm not quite sure what the industry was they were spotted at. It was just kind of odd that all 3 of them were the same kind of car, all Western Pacific, and they were spotted in their individual spots. I want to say it was a corrugated company, a company that deals with corrugated cardboard, but certainly something that these would have been used for. So we're doing the 1970s Southern Pacific. We always have to do the Southern Pacific just because they sell so well. You guys just can't get enough of them. Now, for you guys that are doing the 90s, you know, my layout, I could say, is a little bit more modern than some of the stuff I've done in the past. I'd want to look at the 90s version. Subtle differences, but the really cool difference that strikes me is check out the speed lettering. Just really cool. So this is 1990s. Here's another one that you guys keep asking for, and we keep delivering them for you because they do so well. This is a 1990s era car as well. And again, if you didn't catch it, everything that I'm showing you here is available in 3 different road numbers, so you can mix and match. You can build up a fleet of these if you want to. Golden West service, 1990s era. And one that I'm probably just going to have to get just because I remember my college days rail fanning and seeing these. 1990s era Wisconsin Central. These were all over the Midwest. Another popular road. Now, we didn't stop there. We know that there's guys that are modeling outside the 1990s too. You know, guys that are modeling anywhere between the 2010 mark all the way up. And it's true. You'll still see these out there. We're offering a prime for grime version in the Golden West, but these are SP. They're lettered for SP. This is what I like. Check this out. That's what you get with the prime for grime. The blue's not only faded out, but you've got that scratchy, worn look on all your painted and logos. You can see where it's been patched out. This car, 2010 on up. So you guys that are doing modern stuff, here you go. Here's another variation. Looks like you might have had a repair job here. They just kind of put some paint on it. Even on the ends, you've got the patched out. And then finally, even another version. Still SP, but technically cotton belt. I like this one. This is really cool. The blue's not quite as faded out. It's in pretty relatively good shape. And for whatever reason, they had some black paint laying around. They just threw that over the old marks and stenciled in the cotton belt. Now here's something else that I want to point out. Check this out. Now for you guys in the audience that used to do your own custom painting and decaling, you never wanted to see this happen. But guess what? In the real world, this is what happens. They're just stencils. These are just tools. They're not showpieces. These are a vehicle to get product from point A to point B. And every minute they're stuck somewhere not earning their keep, they're losing money. So when they became Southern Pacific, they patched those out quick, and they literally just have stencils. They spray paint those stencils. All they care about is that they've got all of the lettering and numbering as they like. Now, it's not even. It's a quick and dirty. But that's how it's done in the real world. They just want the important information. And that's what we've done here. These are all based on images that the developer found when they were doing their research. So these are based on cars, based on an actual prototype, because they are Genesis. Now you can run these on a radius of 18. They really look better on a 22-inch radius. If you've got a switching layout like mine, that's not an issue, but now I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back and grab the guy behind me here. This is what I love about this. Even though I have just a little tiny, and you can see it behind me in my primary screen, my little switching layout, this is the layout that I'll take sometimes on the road, and maybe you'll get a chance to see it in real life at some point. But it's just a small layout, very simple. But you put a nice car like this in here in the right light, they just look really nice. And maybe you have a very small layout. That kind of allows you to focus, your fleet. You're not just going out and buying stuff randomly. It makes you focus a little bit. So you can use that extra money on the Genesis models if you want, and just build up a really nice fleet for your small layout. And just imagine, I haven't weathered this one yet. I need to weather it. I picked this one up from the previous release. And yeah, definitely needs some weathering. Definitely needs some weathering. So there you are. That's all the Genesis stuff that we're going to be talking about today. You have until Friday, the 25th, I believe, of February to pre-order either the GP50s, the GP18s, or the Pcnf Box Cars. Highly recommend all of them. I mean, the two products that I showed you tonight are from my personal collection, and I run them often, whether it be on this layout or a host layout somewhere. And really love the way the details are specific to each locomotive, not just the road name. And that's something you got to remember with Genesis. The details are specific to the road number of the locomotive. It's not just, hey, these are all Burlington Northern, so they're all green, they're all going to have the same pieces. That's not typically the case in Genesis. So I got one more thing to show you, and then we'll close with some questions. Let's see what we got here. I'm going to go ahead and minimize one of my screens, and I want to share a little bit of N scale for you guys. A couple of guys were asking about N scale, and do you have anything to share in N scale? And I do this week. Now, you guys have probably heard of Steve's Trains. He's got a YouTube channel. Check his channel out, Steve's Trains. He does some really cool stuff. He does a lot of N scale, but he also does some HO as well. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And hopefully the internet cooperates with us. It's thinking. It's going to play an ad again. There we go. So here he's talking about the newly available PS1 50-foot box cars. These just came into stock a couple of weeks ago. I'll zoom in so you can see that. And what Steve does, he does a really nice review of these 50-foot PS1 box cars. But what's really cool is if you watch his video, he tells you how to weather them. And he's got a really interesting procedure for weathering. I really enjoy it. In fact, I'm going to try it on some of my own scale. So check out his channel. It's Steve's Trains. And Steve is known for doing these really cool layouts. He does project layouts throughout the year. And the time it takes me to work on one layout, he's built 4. So Steve's Trains. And this is the 50-foot PS1s. I'll be sharing these tonight and I believe Friday on our Facebook page. So if you don't get over to the YouTube channel, watch for the Facebook live feed and you'll see his review come up. Speaking of YouTube, if you get a chance, go on over to our YouTube channel and like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates, because not only are we dropping these Train Tuesdays and our monthly announcements, but we now have the Athearn Extra. February, we'll have our second Athearn Extra. We're going to be talking about the Genesis items that we briefly discussed here today. Get some background on the locomotives, maybe some historical pictures, stories, you name it. We're going to talk about it, and we're also going to open it up to you folks to ask questions. So definitely stay tuned for that. You'll see it in the live stream when we're ready to go to live, and it's going to be one of these Fridays at 7. So at this point, I've got some time. I know we went a little long tonight, but there was just so much good information to talk about. I want to see what we got for questions. Let's see, Jake. You got a lot of stuff going on here. Love the Norfolk Southern GP50s with the ditch lights, Jim. Any chances we modern Norfolk Southern guys will get another run of ES40 DCs in the next run of GEVOs? Off the top of my head, I can't remember. I will say that Norfolk Southern is a very strong brand right now, or a strong road. So we do offer it quite often. Short answer is I don't know of anything coming soon. Let's see. Somebody had asked, I just saw it briefly, and I don't know who it is. Otherwise, I'd put you on the screen. But somebody wanted to know, are we ever going to do our SD40-2s in the Genesis line? We've got a lot of projects in the hopper right now. A lot of projects. Stuff that we haven't told you about, as well as updating some of our older releases. And that is probably in the list. When will it be Genesis? That I can't tell you. But I think it's safe to say that at some point in the future, you'll see an Athearn SD40-2 in the Genesis line. Mystic wants to know, any Southern Railway stuff coming in N scale? Southern, the Southern, or Norfolk Southern? I'm going to assume Southern. An N scale. Trying to think. I don't think so. Not right away. Nicholas wants to know, any idea we might see a sample or preview of those Amtrak 50th Genesis locos? Let's see. We announced those last summer. I believe it was July, or I think it was August we announced those. Probably myself, John, or Janet might post some pictures of those in, I'd say, 2 or 3 months, maybe. But be sure that when I do have an opportunity to have one on Train Tuesday, I will bring it on, or at least an Athearn Extra. Any time frame for our Milwaukee Road GP9s with dynos coming? I don't know what you're talking about. I think you're going to have a happy spring. How's that? Let's see. I'm going to go back a little bit, see if there's any questions I might have missed. Here's a good idea. Love the Tiger Stripe GP50s. Now we need some BN fuel tenders. Great suggestion. If you're not familiar with what BN Green 1970 is talking about, do a quick search, do a Google search. Cool Cascade green and black tanks, and they were fuel tenders for an experimental program that they were doing. I won't go into the details here, but yeah, that's a great suggestion. And what I would highly recommend you do, and I'm going to ask you to do it pretty please with a cherry on top, please go to athearn.com, go to the Contact Us page, and go to Product Suggestion Emails, Athearn Product Suggestions, and put that in there. I think that's a great idea. And yeah, maybe if we bug the guys enough in development, maybe they'll do it. I'd be all for it. Brian Rock Railfan, does Athearn model trains still make HO scale train sets? Currently, no, but please stay tuned. Daylight Dave's got some kind comments regarding our development efforts and our time slot. He says, really appreciate the road name and road number specific engine exact details. Thank you so much for the later West Coast time slot. Well, Dave, thank you for your comment. As far as the time slot, yeah, I mean, we want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to see Train Tuesday and the Athearn Extra live, so they can participate. And that's one of the fun things. With the pandemic, it's been kind of hard to go to train shows and see us in person. This is a little bit of a nice way to communicate with us and see what you guys are working on, what you'd like to see us working on. And as far as the Genesis details, yeah, you're welcome. The development puts a lot of time into Genesis units doing that kind of research, and it's amazing how much time that takes. I'm hoping in one of the future Athearn extras, I can get one of the developers on here and they can kind of show you just how much work it is to get all the documentation for these locomotives. Good question, George, and I know what you're talking about. I'm waiting for my Vermont Rail. So why the delay on the ST70M-2s? Simply put, our factory shuts down for Chinese New Year, and they had them done before then, but literally they shut down for about a month, if I remember right, for New Year. So when that's shut down, everything is shut down. But we should be seeing some updates in the shipping. They'll be coming back to work soon, and so we should be seeing those dates updated here pretty soon. I'd say in the next couple of weeks or so. All right, I got time for one more question, and I've kept you all long enough. I'll look for a good question to end on. I see some questions asking about decals and shirts and all of that. Stay tuned on that end. N scale, Stephen, we will be talking about N scale in a future Train Tuesday. For all you guys that are happy about the time change, you are more than welcome. And that's makes it easier for everybody, I think. Kevin says never long enough. Wait for the April release. Let's see. All right, we're going to end it with HO Scale Railfan, because he's got anybody that writes that much, I want to give him some time. Are you guys thinking of doing some RBM and equipment later, such as the SD50s, SD50MS, SD50-2s, and GP38-2s? They're having their 40th anniversary next year. Out of that list, what we could do right away, obviously, would be GP38-2s, and even then, we'd have to take a look and see. I'm not real familiar with that road. I don't know if our developers are, so that requires some research to make sure that we've got the proper nose on the GP38-2 and some of the other details. But if it's something that we can do in light of an anniversary, and if there is enough demand for it, we will probably contemplate doing something like that. But it's a good suggestion, and if you'd like, you can definitely use our new product suggestion email. Put that in there. And don't be surprised, they might want to get some, if you've got some access to pictures and stuff, they might want to talk to you. All right, so guys, I want to thank you all for joining me tonight in the workshop. Hopefully, you've been in the workshop too, working on some stuff while we've been talking about these great products. Looks like Tom's out there doing some ballasting. Yeah, you better get your track done because there's some GP18s you're going to need to order for your layout. And yeah, there's a lot of guys asking about VIA. Stay tuned for that. 2022 is shaping up to be a good year. It may have had a rough start, but we're doing really good. We got some really great stuff coming out for you this year. I'm really excited about it, and I hope you are too. So if you don't mind, I'm going to go back to running my GP18 and do some switching before I head off to bed. Meanwhile, I will see you next time on Train Tuesday, next Tuesday at 7:00 p.m. Central Time. And until then, I want everybody out there to be happy, be healthy, do some modeling, and high greens. Take care, everybody.